Today's guest is John Ruman. John Ruman was a partner for more than 10 years in a financial advisory firm in upstate New York, USA. His total experience in financial services is about 15 years with business, estate, and independence planning as a focus. He loves helping people create a vision for their future and help take actionable steps towards that vision. John was also a partner in an educational consultancy firm for over 10 years. He enjoyed taking students through a journey of what they wanted to accomplish and move that backwards into a degree and university that truly meshed with that. He moved to Trinidad and Tobago in 2015 and started an international business and executive coaching company, leveraging his years of experience in wealth and educational consulting. In 2017, he began offering life coaching services, focusing on helping people achieve their inner greatness. And if you're not impressed already, John has over 20 years of experience in the martial art of Taekwondo and has achieved the master rank of 4th degree black belt. I'm so impressed. His rank is recognized by the World Taekwondo Federation in Seoul, Korea. He is an avid traveler and has completed 2 70.3 Ironman triathlons and a marathon. I think you're a really great first guest to have for this season.
Oh, thank you.
But just because you're the first guest doesn't mean that actually your interview will be released first, but still, I still think it's good energy to start with. So, I know I just did a lot of background on you, but I still want to hear out of your mouth like what your journey has been, what your professional journey has been, and how you ended up in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here.
Yes.
It's really nice to be with you and do this.
I know, isn't it fun?
Yes, it
Oh
is.
my God! Let's do interviews all the time, forever.
Let's. So the journey, I would say, from a work professional standpoint. So you got that first part, and then when I moved to Trinidad, I was the boss, if you will, of that old office, and they would not let me be the boss anymore. So I had the rare and scary situation that I had to literally start over. And I asked myself, what do I really want to do? And I had a journey personally going from deeply insecure to becoming more and more confident. And I had a lot of knowledge in various areas. And I said, well, maybe I can help people learn these things. I found I was a pretty good teacher. But I said, how can I leverage my natural skill sets and kind of provide confidence building, but also skill building for many areas of people that they need. I think we all need. So a lot of what I do now helps people at the core to become more confident and to believe in themselves. It on the outside may appear that I'm doing these random things, but there's actually a core underlying why or mission underneath it.
Okay, I'm glad that you brought all those things together because they can seem very disparate if you look at them separately.
Absolutely.
But I'm really glad that you helped bring that cohesiveness in. So, but I'm curious now about, you said you had to start over when you came to Trinidad and Tobago. But I'm curious now of why you even came if you had to start over, because I think for many persons that could be something really daunting, and I think a lot of persons, if they're transitioning or moving to a different country, they really like to have certain things in place, and a lot of that, it has to do with career as well.
True.
So I'm curious about how you ended up here, and then you had to think, okay, well, what am I going to do to support myself in this new place? So how did you end up here since it wasn't career driven?
Towards the end of 2014, I met a woman on Facebook. And no intentions of anything. We started talking. We had known each other on Facebook for a long time, similar interests, but never really talked. It was like a happy birthday message, that was it, back and forth, that was it. And then we started really talking November of 2014, and then no, it had to be 20, whatever. The year before. So January 2014 is when we started talking. Like I got the years wrong, and then I fell head over heels in love, and from someone who had grown up with divorced parents, never thought that I would ever get married, I said, I think I met my wife. And then in May...
This is when you physically met the person?
I have not met her.
Okay.
So I talked to her first time roughly late November
in
2013. That New Year's Eve, we had our first actual Skype.
Right.
And then we started talking nonstop after that. And then I said, wow, this I think is my wife. And then I said, where do you live? I live in the Caribbean. Oh, great. Where do you live? Trinidad and Tobago. I had heard of it. I had no idea where it was. Right. She goes, oh, we're the southernmost Caribbean island, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. So I look it up, and I was like, okay, Trinidad. That's interesting.
Right.
And then because she felt the same vibes I was feeling, I said, huh, so how is this going to work?
So at that time you were in New York?
Yes. And to be clear for those who are watching,
New York State.
New York State. I was in central New York, which in the nearest city called Syracuse, which is kind of like the central physical point of the state. I had no idea what the country was, and if you read the news, it seems like it's people who watch the news know they describe it poorly, but it's really not as bad as people describe. So anyway, I didn't know where it was, and I hadn't yet met her, so I flew down in May for a little over 2 weeks and knew immediately I met my wife. And we made the decision. She didn't want the cold, and who doesn't? I lived for 25 years.
Correct.
And the city I'm from has no major merits, but it has the highest snowfall on average of any city in the world. Right. 10 feet a year. It's insane. Right. So I was like, well, I can leave and live in the Caribbean. So that was one thing, and that eventually happened, obviously. But the scariest thing is, I'm like, what am I going to do? Right. And I'm not going to downplay this. There's nothing as scary as in my life than actually making that switch. Nothing has been remotely scary. I had been planning to buy 2-family houses. I had enough furniture for 2-family houses. I literally gave it to a family member. Like it was a lot of, it was very intense. It was intense emotionally for us, which helped fuel it, but it was not an easy, I'm just going to go to the Caribbean, because I'm like, what am I going to do? Yeah. So I had a way for me to kind of sell my rights to the old company I was a part of, and that helped me bridge the gap financially, but I still had to start over, because I wasn't legally allowed to do what I was doing down here, there.
Yeah, that's such a good story, though.
Yeah, thank you.
In the time frame within which you were speaking, when you thought to yourself, I think this is my wife, that was like 2 to 3 months?
No. To be honest, I probably knew within the first few times of talking to her. Okay. Very, very, I didn't have that without, you're naturally attracted to people, whatever, but I was like compelled. Right. I've never had such a internal draw or push, however you want to describe it, as that experience. Right. So for those who don't believe in true love or that kind of like the real amazing relationships can happen, they can happen, and when they do happen, you will not have any disillusion if this is the right person.
Yeah. So you might not remember this specific thing, but do you remember what was the first thing that you all said to each other? Is it that she commented on your post? I mean online, did she comment on your post, or were you in a similar group or something?
Well, what happened is she had a relationship here, I had a relationship there, both kind of longer term, both had recently split up. I actually, when me and this other person had broken up, I said, something pinged me to reach out to her. And I did. And then she's like, oh, maybe John's reaching out to show me so I can talk to him, whatever. And I was like, well, something was drawing me to her. And she had, so it was a good time, because it wasn't she was involved, had to break up. So that was a time I knew that we had something. Because I'm like, I don't know, it's just a weird, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, it's a good story. It's a really good story. And you mentioned before that you're someone who transitioned from not being that confident to being a lot more confident, which you are right now, which I can attest to because it's radiating from all over you. It's like bulletproof confidence.
Thank you.
And I follow you online as well, and I've seen certain posts where you spoke about being depressed and all that. So I wanted to know, like, what were you depressed about? And what was your journey? How did you transform from that state to the John we see now?
That's a great question. So, growing up, I was born in a state called Tennessee. For those who don't know, Tennessee is in the U.S. And then from birth to when I finally moved to Syracuse, that city I lived in for 25 years, we had moved about 20 times. And the move is not here to 2 blocks over. It was across the country. So these big, big moves. And the hard part about it is literally, for example, kindergarten. I don't know if they have kindergarten in Trinidad, but so I had 2 kindergarten schools, entirely different people. 2 first grades. So I had literally friends, no friends. Friends, no friends. And it just destroyed me over time. I became very resentful of my parents, especially my father. I blamed my father for it. And then it literally over years just brought me down because when you're a kid, you don't know whose fault it is. You're like, I'm doing this. I'm creating myself losing all of these relationships. Right. So before Facebook, whenever 2015, whenever Facebook became 2012, whenever it was, I didn't have any friends pre the last town I lived in. So up until, it was crazy. So that destroyed me. And then when I moved to Syracuse, there was times, when like life's nothing much is happening, whatever. And then those are the times that it's easier to pull away and feel a little down. And I started pulling away and feeling more down. And I actually moments of suicide, like high anxiety. It was awful. As if anyone's experienced that, they know it's awful. And what happened is I basically got really, really, really angry at everyone in the world, which momentarily took me out of being super depressed. So if you view super depressed as being like the bottom barrel of like emotional levels, being pissed off at them and all that kind of stuff actually brought me out of it temporarily. And then once I was past being angry, I was able to slowly bump. And then I said, can't cross my arms, I'll mess up my mic, but I was like, I know there's lots of people out there who are amazingly confident. How the heck did they do it? And I began exploring these people. So people probably heard of Tony Robbins. I'm like, this guy is like bigger than life. So I started studying, what are these guys doing? How did they do it? And it became, for lack of a better term, if I were to say my thing I focus on is how to become confident was all I was paying attention to. So if I did something and it made me feel better, I would just do more of it. And one of the blessings is when I moved to Trinidad, the big answer was now I can teach people that. I can show them what the heck I've learned. So I've learned physical things you can do with your body and things you can say. Like one of the most self-defeating things is negative self-talk, which is something bad happens and then we say, I always do that. I'm such a loser. Why am I always doing this? And we say it over and over again, and it runs in our head, and the problem is we believe it. If you told me I'm a loser, I would, Shana, I'm not a loser. But she said it a lot, maybe. More if you were like a parent or, But most people talk to themselves poorly. So if I were to give some easy inkling that people could start saying to yourself, I'm a winner. I am a champion. I was born for this, and I truly think you were born for doing what you're doing now. And we all have great potential, unlimited potential. I know I have potential, and that saying that you just feel good, and you naturally breathe deeper, because like your breath changes when you're insecure. You're kind of shallow breathing, your posture comes up, you open up, and you just I got this.
What would you say was kind of that period? And I would guess that you would say it's a constant journey because there are peaks beyond peaks. But where would you say if there was a moment where there was kind of a threshold where you moved into an arena of confidence? Maybe some some specific thing that clicked into place where it was like a marked step?
That's a good question.
How long would you say maybe
From the depression to...
Yeah, when you started researching and looking into those things.
That's a darn good question. I don't think I can actually pinpoint. Well, because what I've experienced with all personal growth, it has a growth upward and then naturally falling back in some way.
Right.
So you can say, oh, I want to exercise. No one exercises every day and keeps on going to the goal. They exercise, oh, I take a couple of days off, and then they recommit.
Right.
So the actual experience, I would guess, because I don't remember a specific day.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't. If I really thought about it, I probably could come up with, but there was never, boom.
Right.
It was just a building.
Right.
I'll tell you what did help. You mentioned in the bio when we started, I did Taekwondo. So in Taekwondo, I didn't do it to kick and punch. And while that's fun, and believe me, it's a great workout, and it's, yes, I love it. But I was just so unbelievably insecure. I said, these people seem pretty confident. And then I became, so Taekwondo helped a lot. So I would say my journey into Taekwondo, which was probably around 14, 15, starting. And then yes, I would say maybe 6 months into Taekwondo was really it, but it wasn't just the Taekwondo. I mentioned before I had issues with my dad, right? Which I've since lovingly actually, and this may sound insane, I actually thank my dad more than you can imagine. I would not be John if I did not have that. And we commonly get so mad at the things that are the worst things that happen to us. I can't believe this happened to me. Why do I, like always negative self-talk. When in truth, that made me John. If I didn't go through that awful experience growing up, I couldn't help the world. And my mission is to help the world. I couldn't do it. I would be a financial advisor in the States still, maybe down here doing something, but I wouldn't be trying to change the world. So the reason I bring that up is in Taekwondo, I began realizing the value of meeting people who had the qualities, these were adult men, who I could admire and look up to. And were kind of like a tribe of elders, if you will. And I got to know them and became friends, and many were 20, 30 years older than me. And I'm still friends with all of them now. And it was like, these are amazing men. And it's not that my dad's not amazing. I'm not trying to put down my dad. But he was very busy and he was gone all the time. So these are the people I was able to model. And actually going back to Tony, we talked about Tony Robbins earlier. Tony says the number one way to get forward is to model someone who's done it. And I'm like, these guys got it. So I basically would spend time with them, and we talk about like you feel in the confidence of the room. I would pick up their vibes of like, this is what it is. And a lot of it was just taking full responsibility, not blaming other people. It was like very basic stuff, but then you have to embody it. So saying I take full responsibility and taking full responsibility are two entirely different things.
Yes, I understand. So the other thing I want to talk about is something that I saw you post about as well, which is the North Star. Mm-hmm. And from what I gleaned, it's kind of something that has to do with your purpose, mm-hmm. that you feel deep within you is kind of what you're called to do, or like what you're meant to be doing. Some persons may not believe in that, but for the context of this discussion, I'm interested in what you believe in. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit more about that North Star? And if somebody feels like they don't have a North Star, how can they find it?
Great question again, thank you. So the North Star is, for a business, they would call it their mission. Here's my mission in business. I think every individual has a mission or a purpose. And there's a book, the North Star was actually based on a book. Martha, surname starts with a B. And she kind of gives you step by step, and totally check it out, it's worth checking out. I very, very strongly, since I've kind of come into feeling what mine feels like, believe in the whole purpose North Star concept. And I actually think a lot of me being more conscientious of its existence was when crazy stuff happened. Me having to move down here. How often do you literally have a reset button on your life? no wife. Living cold climate, it was negative 18 Celsius the day I moved. To, I have no idea how hot, because I don't know the Celsius scale yet.
Appropriate. It's just an appropriate temperature for life.
Wonderful, yes. No complaints ever. But just the major shift of being forced to say, whoa, and then ask those deep questions. It's almost like you'll hear people say, I had a car accident. I had to ask these questions. I had whatever, I had cancer. Whatever, these people would have this awful experience, and then they ask. The problem is most people wait for that to ask those questions. So the path, I feel, to actually having those questions be asked would be, so we're filming this in January, and the common thing in January is goal setting and all that kind of good stuff. But people don't say, what would my ideal life be? And why would I be doing that? So it's not just living on the beach and doing that, because after a while that may get boring, but what is fun for you and easy for you? So for me, easy questions to help this is, what's really easy for you that are hard for others? What do people come to you for help? What have you always felt you are here to do? Most people just push it down. They're like many artists are this way. They're like, I can't do art. I'm an artist. And yet, on the walls behind us, someone got paid to do that, and they probably can pay their bills. And they're probably happier because they're paying their bills than working as a waiter, not paying their bills, and not doing the art that they're meant to do. So I would say if it makes you alive, just continue in that direction. The one thing I do have to say is I don't know if it's ever perfect, this is it in a cookie cutter box. I feel we're kind of always growing, evolving, expanding, and becoming. And in order to do that, we must understand that, for example, where you are today, you'll be a different version of yourself in a year because you'll grow. So where you're going and serving the world will be different than it is today. And that's okay. We're so used to, this is who I am, I finally figured out who I am, and now I'm evolving. It can become frustrating. If you can embrace change, you're much better off than ignoring the fact that you are every morning like, I just want to do this, and you're not doing it. That, in my personal opinion, is an awful life. But if you're waking up and doing at least most, if not all of what you do, life is wonderful. Like I work 7 days a week, not because, oh, I got to get all this stuff done, and there's always stuff to do. I love it. I love it. I'll work 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday. It's not work. I'm having fun. You're obviously very happy about this. But I just want to serve. So if this feels really good, I mean, I don't care if I do talks from like 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, and I go to bed usually, I go to bed early. 8 or 9 o'clock, John's sleeping. People think I'm crazy, but I like to go to bed early, wake up early.
I don't play with my sleep.
Me neither.
I don't play with that.
But if there's a big group that I can serve with a talk that's going to change their life, I'll do it. And I'll be wired for hours because that's why I'm here. I'm here to serve, give, make these people feel amazing. And if I impact someone in a little inkling that makes their life somewhat better, I kind of view us all having this amazing benefit to the world and creating a drop in the small ocean pond that eventually fills the ocean. So however we can all help the world, we should. And I think that's why we're here, is to help others live their purpose.
Right. I'm going to say something that's off topic as well, but something that you said just sent my mind there. And it's really interesting because when you started responding to my question about the North Star, and you were talking about how a lot of things shifted kind of simultaneously in your life. And a big part of that was meeting your wife. And one of the things that it's like something that I've been thinking of a lot recently is kind of, like a lot of the upheaval that I think exists in the world today, and kind of the connection of that to the elemental root of everything, which is the relationship between a man and a woman. And I'm like, there's something that keeps drawing me back to that as kind of the starting point of everything, and kind of like if that was healed, like if all the male-female relationships in the world would heal, then it would have this ripple effect of a really peaceful world. And it's something that I've really been thinking about recently, and almost as though I'm not saying that people don't have careers that are specific things that are fulfilling, and that is one aspect of your life, because your life has a lot of dimensions. I'm not saying that if it was collapsed, persons can be filled just in a romantic relationship. But I almost feel like following that elemental instinct of that bonding, I almost feel like it releases other things into your life as well.
To me, it's like an amplifier.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, I know it's off topic. But
No, it's totally fine. Well, the one thing I think is the world is kind of shifting to where people are becoming much more spiritually aware.
Yeah.
In 10 years, people heard of the book The Secret. I think 30 years ago, people would have thought that's insane, but now everyone talks about it, law of attraction, all these kind of topics. It's becoming normal talk. Also, at the same time, for many, I'm not sure how long, the masculine energy, the men of the world, have been very domineering over women. They couldn't even vote in the U.S. until the 50s or something, you know. So what I'm seeing is a lot of the beautiful feminine energy finally becoming free and expressing itself as the world needs. And there's a great quote from a gentleman, wouldn't it be great to have a world ruled by grandmother elders? How much war would there be? Everything would be worked out via a dialogue. So, but right now, for many, many aspects of the world, that's not allowed to express itself. A woman goes for a political thing, she has to be more of a masculine energy and be hard and tough and all that to have an opinion, to be listened to. Otherwise, she's not being taken seriously. And I think part of this shift of the spiritual upgrade, for lack of a better term, and the kind of increasing of women, for the most part, most women are the feminine, of that energy being allowed to fully express itself, I think is the next phase of humanity, because I think it'll probably just go into balance. I just think it's highly out of balance now. I think it's becoming into balance. And it's a great time of upheaval because that's a huge shift. So all these countries throughout Middle East, for example, have very, very strong women oppression, but that's bumping up, that's being less and less and less. And I think it's a huge blessing, but change is hard. And those who are in power like to stay in power. So that's, I'll use the training term, causes a lot of bacchanal, right? So we have those bacchanal happening. But in the end, it's beautiful. But Robin Sharma, you guys know Robin Sharma, the monk who sold my Ferrari, he says, you can't start with the change, the middle's really messy, and then it's beautiful in the end. Yes. So right now we're in the messy part. Yes. And I think we should embrace the messy part. Right. And then just know it's part of the process. Yeah. Because in the end it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have such amazing people on my show. I'm so amazed. Okay, so I feel like you're someone who reads a lot of books, is that correct? I mean, a lot is a very relative term, like it's not specific. But I'll be vague. I think we can both understand context, but I feel like you probably read a lot of books.
I read a lot of books.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of books at all.
Although let me put an asterisk on that. I use Audible. Okay. I listen to, so Trinidad has all the traffic, I listen to books on Audible.
Okay, that's still
but it's reading
one step higher than what I do.
Yeah.
But if you had to name, so a little bit later in the discussion, I'm going to kind of focus in on the business aspect. Mm-hmm. But just for humanity, like all human beings, if you had to list 3 books that you thought everybody should read, I'm really interested to hear this answer. What books would you pick? This is John's 3 books that everyone should read.
2 are pretty easy. So the first is a book called Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. I don't know if you're familiar with the term red pill, like from The Matrix. Yeah. Which one do you would take? Blue is you're living in the matrix, red is the truth. Right. So the red, so if you hear the term red pill, you're just receiving a little bit of the truth. Right. So it opened me up to the concept of spirituality, of that we are more than just physical beings in a meat suit kind of concept. And I have this intuition, what does that mean? So it opened me up to that concept, and it's honestly the only book I've ever read that I could not go to sleep because I couldn't wait for the next page. So for me, that was that book. It was the most gifted book I've ever had in my life. In other words, I have bought probably 20 to 30 copies and given to people to read. And those who actually do read it, like John, this is incredible because it's really unbelievable. It's more guy-focused, but it just makes you feel like everyone usually thinks like martial arts are cool. It has like a martial arts kind of, but on a spiritual side aspect, and it's beautifully written, and it red pills you in the idea that we're more than just physical beings. So, which I think is nice. Religions try to do that, but a lot of people don't, I find, actually believe it as much as they say they believe it, if that makes sense.
I know. Yes, it does make sense.
Second book. John is a very relaxed, chill person. So I have two sides to me, right? Obviously highly energetic right now, I'm fired up. So I'm very, very, very like that, right? But there's also a part of me that's just totally chill, relax. I'll just lime on the beach and do nothing. That doesn't help business because business generally takes a level of action. So there's a book by an author, Grant Cardone, who's very famous for a book called 10X, and everyone watched him. He's prolific online.
He's crazy in a good way. In a good way.
Right. Yeah. He's like an alpha male, intense. So if you can either accept the intensity, embrace it, whatever. He wrote a book, not 10X. It's actually the follow-up to 10X called Be Obsessed or Be Average. And that book is
See, I know the names of the books, but I haven't read the books. But I know which books to read.
So Be Obsessed or Be Average is incredible. What I love about it, when I finished that book, like I've read it about 4 or 5 times now, because it puts a fire within you. For 2 to 3 weeks, without trying, my productivity skyrockets. Which, for me, as Mr. Chill most of the time, I'm the grounded Zen guy. My wife, always tells me I'm always Mr. Zen. It puts a fire under my bottom, so I move. Yeah. And I do the things that I know I need to do.
That's amazing.
So for me, it was a biggie. So for those who are like me, or just don't have a natural inclination, because no one wants to be pushed by their boss or whatever, but it really, really helped me. So that was another one, second book. And third is actually a book series, but all by the same author, same concept. Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, there's 2 main books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Club. And the reason I like it so much is it shows people that they can actually not be wage slaves. Everyone feels, I have to work these hours and to survive, to pay my rent, to feed my kids, to put the clothing on, all the normal stuff. And not that you don't initially, but that's not the only way. So it shows you how to kind of shift to becoming a person that can have things work for you. And it can take 20 years, don't get me wrong, or 30 years. But it makes you believe in and actually see how it's possible. One thing I tell people is I used to be a financial advisor. Had I actually read and truly embraced the concept of this book, I don't know if I could have been a financial advisor anymore. Because a lot of what they teach is similar, but more product-driven, not driven by... So very, very basically, it teaches something called passive income. So if you think of a rental property, they pay rent, you have some expenses, what's left over you don't have to work for. A little bit of work, talk to the, let's say, property manager, but you don't have to trade 40 hours a week for it. Over time you can buy more of these things that produce that, and eventually your day job is an option. So that's what I loved, because I never thought there was an out. And I think it's wonderful to know, it's very empowering, it actually goes back to the confidence thing, to know there's an out. So that's why I'm so passionate about the book series, is because it actually can be an out for people when many people are desperate. And in Trinidad, many people are underpaid. So for them, it's a nice shift. And people worldwide don't believe they can get out of the rat race. So it's a very wonderful, so those are the 3 books. So Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Dan Millman, Be Obsessed to Be Average, Grant Cardone, and then the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, Robert Kiyosaki.
You know what I thought about as you were speaking about Grant's book is I was having a discussion with somebody some months ago, but this person is into energy and spirituality and those kinds of things. And they were telling me about this concept. I don't want to say concept in the sense that it's not true, but they were just explaining it to me conceptually. That everybody every individual kind of has their own energetic imprint or their own spiritual / energetic imprint, and you can kind of encapsulate it in a way, and almost, it's not like you're giving away yourself to other people, but people are able to like interact with your energy, like when it's encapsulated in a specific way.
Okay.
And so it's I remember that when you spoke about the book, because I was thinking about how you said that you, without even trying, your productivity went up. And it reminded me of that, because it's almost like his energy was just around, and just like you didn't even, as you're saying, it's not that you didn't feel as though you were consciously manipulating your systems or environments to have that happen, but it's almost like through the book that because I've watched him, and that man he's a beast. Like, he's living in a whole different reality. So, and I'm saying maybe that it just reminded me of that, you know, like maybe it's something like that where the energy just kind of...
He's like, whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm saying through the book that energy kind of impacted you in a way.
I listened to the book too. I've never read it.
Yeah. Well, listen to it.
And Grant, no, that's what I'm saying. The only way I actually read the book is Audible, which is Grant, the crazy man, on fire, telling you to be obsessed.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm saying that energy maybe just permeated, and you got some of that. So that's actually really interesting. Like, that's actually really interesting. Like, if you want to become something, how subconsciously you can kind of just transform yourself by just getting that vibe around you, which is similar to what you were saying earlier, where you were interacting with all the different men, and it just kind of by osmosis it kind of transformed. Very interesting. Okay, so talking about personal development still, what would you say are maybe 3, I stole it from my mother, the magic of 3. What are 3 things that you would say keep persons from reaching their goals?
Okay. 1, most people don't do goals right, and that they focus on what's called the results goal. And the results goal is this. Results goal is, I want to make $1 million. And the problem with just focusing on that is it doesn't actually get the thing done. So for example, if you are, I don't know, someone who has to do phone call sales to have the 40,000 come in, you focus on the the phone calls you need to do to create the results. Make sense? So that's one big part, is people focus on, I'm going to get the 40,000, and that's such a wonderful thing, but that's a thing, not something you actually do to accomplish the thing. So instead of tracking the 40,000, you track the action, and you do it in such a short time frame, 2 or 3 months, and you say, here's my action, I'm going to do this hardcore, I'm making sure the numbers are right, and you have an accountability, and actually, so that's a big one, an accountability. So if they're not held accountable for some level of the action side, it doesn't help. The carrot or the stick. Most people, unfortunately or fortunately, are more apt to do stuff because they're running away from something. Tony Robbins calls it the pain-pleasure principle, which is, I don't want that. So for example, you can write someone a check who, let's say you have a certain political party. That political party is easy. You write the other political party, which you don't like, a check. And then should you not do your stuff, they get the check. So financial is big. And make it a big enough dollar that you're like, good. And that will make you do. So accountability, usually the stick. So the stick is the check. Doing the actual action-based goals instead of the results. So you still have results goals, you just work on, you kind of engineer it backwards to find out what do I got to do, and on that, and I guess we'll make this the third part of that, and then we can be done with the question, but don't do more than 3 actions, because your brain, which is why your mom said things are 3, anything bigger than 3, I mean it kind of can be up to 5, but 3 is the ideal, feels big. So I got to make calls, I got to, whatever, 3 basic things. And if you do those 3 things and then track the amount you do in those things, and then you see how well you're doing, you'll do it. But if you do 5, if you have this huge list of tasks, it doesn't work. And if you have a lot more to do than just those 3, simplify all these areas. Let's say there's 20 tasks in this, but they all have to do with marketing. You say marketing daily. So that would be one of your 3.
So it's breaking down the goals into what are the actions that are getting me to the goal or the result.
So you need to do the result.
Right.
So I want to make this, I want to do it, and then you actually look at the action steps,
Right.
and that's what you track.
Right.
And then you check out after 3 months, how did I do?
Right.
And then you adjust this side, not that side.
Right. And then the second thing is accountability.
Huge.
Right. And then the third thing is, you said something, carrot on a stick.
So on the accountability side, we could actually say that was the check I mentioned.
Right.
But the carrot or stick would be this. If I don't do this, I pay this political party this. The check's in there. A friend of mine has it. I don't have it, so I can't hold off, like not do what I say I'm going to do. And then on the play side is, assuming I do this, I get, doesn't have to be huge, dinner with my wife, weekend in Tobago, even a movie, just some sort of reward that you don't, a lot of people don't give themselves basic things that make them happy. I don't get it, but they don't. So because they don't, it's nice to reward yourself. And so find something that you, for whatever reason, aren't rewarding yourself now, and do it. So that's the carrot, meaning that's what you want.
So this question now is turning the lens more to business.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that some of your books may overlap, but I'll still ask the question and see what the results are. So we did 3 books that you think that if you had to pick 3 books that you think everyone should read, you did your 3. But if someone wanted to be an entrepreneur, what are the 3 books that you think that they should read?
Got it. First one, Profit First. Author's name is Michael Michalowicz. I can't spell the surname. But it's basically this. Most businesses are designed where you have your money coming in, you pay your expenses, and the owner, the actual equations is income minus expenses equals profit. And most businesses don't make squat. Most owners can barely pay their bills when all their employees and staff, they get their, let's say, monthly or how often they're paid, and they are literally like, don't have power, and they're late on the car payment. They do whatever they can to make sure everyone else is taken care of. So what this does is it puts income minus profit equals expenses. And what it does is it does a couple things. Is even if you give yourself literally like 1%, like you would never notice the difference. You feel, we're making money. Because again, most businesses don't make a squat.
Right.
And then the expenses are left over. And then what most people realize is that the business can't run in the expenses, which is why they don't get paid, because the business is too expensive. So they have to tweak and cut and cut and cut. So that's one book. So Profit First. Second book, I would say Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. It's a networking book. Golden. Most people are terrible at networking, but more importantly, it teaches you, let's say you want to meet an influencer. Let's say you go to Grant Cardone's 10X conference and you want to meet Grant. You don't go as an attendee. You call his team and say, I want to be there in the back helping you guys out. What can I do? How can I help? In other words, it is a different approach to the typical person who's just, Grant, I see him, I get a selfie, and I'm done. So you don't want to be that person because you'll never meet Grant. And by meet, I mean actually have a discussion and maybe get to know the person. So you need to become of value to that person. You leverage what's called the law of reciprocity, which is if you give, people will feel compelled to give back. So that's second book, Never Eat Alone, amazing book. Third book, and this one you have to buy physically because it actually has a lot of things, in my opinion, you have to write down and practice. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a negotiation book. And what's funny is it actually teaches you how to be a better listener, how to better conversations. Most people in business, when they sell stuff to people, they get the question, is that like the best price kind of thing they would say in Trinidad? And it teaches you how to never, ever drop your fees again. And the people are all gung-ho for it. So it's powerful. Because most people in Trinidad don't make enough money because, but I have to only drop my fees 20%. The things I quote people are 30% higher than the real cost because everyone's always begging for a price decrease. I literally have never dropped fees once since reading this book. And it's simple. It takes practice. And that's why you actually have to buy the book, physical book, you know, underline, highlight. But I truly think this book, if people use it and implement it, they'll make more money with this book than pretty much most books they'll ever read.